Hey YouTube, what's going on? Abyssalwave here, and today I'm talking about the rest of the patch notes, but more importantly, a huge change, and as the Frostscythe change. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about, the aura that they applied to certain abilities, Howling Blast, Frost Breath, which is Sindragosa's Fury, by the way, not Breath of Sindragosa, Frost Fever, who cares about Death Strike buff or Frost, whatever, like, that really doesn't mean anything. And then, they added a little bit of an aura to Frostscythe. What the aura means is they're adding damage done by those, and that is 3% damage buff to those abilities. That's pretty awesome, Those were Howling Blast used incredibly frequently, and doesn't make up for the Howling Blast nerf that they had. The trait was nerfed heavily, almost half. It's pretty insane. It sucks. I talked about that yesterday, though, so let's stay on track here. 3% buff to Sindragosa's Fury, not a huge deal. And it's a 3-minute CD with Thronebreaker and all that, so that's not crazy. Frost Fever, it's not a big deal. 3% buff to Frostscythe is it's something. It's not crazy, but the real buff to Frostscythe is now Frostscythe procs. Sorry, it doesn't proc Killing Machine, it procs Rhyme. So what Frostscythe did before is, we all know Frostscythe, it has a fourth of the attack power of Obliterate, but it does 4 times its damage when it crits, and it hits in a cone in front of you. Now, it's a really cool thing for certain fights like Scorpiron. You tank Scorp on the ads, and you just get off a bunch of Frostscythes, as long as you don't have any Affliction Locks in your raid, and God fucking forbid you have an Affliction Lock take all your Frostscythes. It was kind of a cool thing we did on Normal and Heroic for a little bit of cheese. But at this point, it just doesn't compare to Sindragosa or Breath of Sindragosa build. It doesn't have a place with Gathering Storm. But, with this buff, it's going to make it very competitive. We're not going to have long breaths. We're not going to be able to generate nearly as much runes as we were before. Because with the huge nerf to our breath duration, we're not going to be getting as many frost empowerments, which means we're going to have less runes, which means we're going to have less uptime on Gathering Storm, or less max stacks. We're able to hit 10 stacks decently easily, so this is a hit, but this Frostscythe buff is pretty interesting. So Frostscythe, instead of having a 45% chance like Obliterate, what they're doing is that they're making basically a 22.5% chance per rune that it uses. So Frostscythe now has a 22.5% chance to make your next Howling Blast consume no runes and deal 300% additional damage. Basically, it procs Rhyme. So I like that a lot. This should have been a thing, though, before. I don't get why it took them so long to realize, hey, since Frostscythe kind of takes the place of Obliterate when it's being used, we should make it proc Rhyme, and we should also make it proc Thronebreaker, because the second half of this is Frostscythe has a 50% chance to proc Thronebreaker. Well, again, should have been a thing before. If it's also sharing Killing Machine, why shouldn't it be sharing triggers to Rhyme and triggers to Thronebreaker if it's already consuming Killing Machine? Made no sense to me before, but it's kind of a nice change because mixing up the meta with Frost TKs is always fun, and this definitely does mix up the meta a bit. Making Frostscythe viable is one step to making sure that we're actually able to compete on AoE still, because with the huge nerf to how they're going to work with Breath of Sindragosa build, and which in turn nerfs our AoE, especially by the humongous nerf to Howling Blast traits, we weren't looking as strong AoE wise, but this buff to Frostscythe really makes me personally excited to see what we're going to have for AoE, because yes, this takes a spot of Gathering Storm, which kind of sucks because Gathering Storm itself is also a huge AoE talent, but it does actually open up a little bit of flexibility with the build right now, because constantly being able to cone your area, your targets in front of you, especially with Tombslayers looking so AoE heavy, is incredible. I like this on AoE fights, especially when you need burst AoE. Burst AoE on demand is always hard to come by, but with Frostscythe, especially with us able to keep up Breath of Sindragosa while using Frostscythe, is kind of cool. we're going to see what it looks like, but just wanted to let you guys know that they are buffing Frostscythe. It's kind of a cool ability. Play around with it a bit in Mythic Plus. That's definitely where it has its place. Or, Scorpion or Allurial, normal or heroic. You can try it out. It's definitely not strong now. Don't use it with Breath of Synderghost, so you just won't be able to ever proc Rhyme, which always sucks. But, it's a really fun talent. I liked using it in 7.1 in Mythic Plus. It was so much fun to use then. But it just lost its place when the tier came out, so we're going to see if it gets its place back. It's kind of cool. Tomorrow I'm going to be talking about the Unholy changes in general. I know I'm not as experienced with Unholy as a lot of people out there, but I still kind of know my stuff with the spec. I'll make sure I do a little bit more research on that to make sure I get everything right for tomorrow, and I will talk to you guys later. Have a good one.